Welcome to the United Christian Marriage Podcast, where we help you build a healthy, united marriage that impacts everyone around you now and for generations to come. Today, we're talking about how to communicate with your husband so that he will actually want to say yes to you. This is going to be an amazing topic. I mentioned it in my last episode, and I just had to make a full episode about this, you guys. So we're going to talk about communication in a way that makes your husband genuinely want to say yes. It is not manipulative. It is just the truths of how men want to be communicated with and how we can cater to those natural tendencies and be respectful while still honoring our own feelings and still getting across what we are wanting and what we are needing. So let's dive in if you want to hear these juicy tips. And if you're tired of communicating in ways that don't work and don't get you anywhere, then you need to listen all the way to the end. Let's dive in. Hey wives, I see you. I know the pressure you're carrying, the pressure to be the perfect wife, the devoted mother, the woman who keeps it all together. You're told to be soft, feminine, and gentle, yet also strong, capable, and a provider. The world pulls you in 100 directions, stretching you thin, leaving you exhausted, and wondering if you're enough. But I need you to hear this. God has more for you. More for your marriage, more for your motherhood, more for the legacy you are building. You are not meant to do this on your own strength, so press in, do the work, and trust that something greater is coming. I just want you guys to dream with me here and imagine what it would be like if your spouse was dying to do the thing you were asking them to do. If they were taking the initiative because they knew it would make you happy. Imagine how good it would feel to ask for something, communicate a need or a want, and get a willing yes out of your husband instead of resistance. Or how nice it would feel to just dream and say, I would love this or that. And the next week, you're waking up to that thing you were dreaming of last week because your spouse took the initiative to go and do it for you. If that is the kind of marriage you want to have, if that is the kind of relationship that you are longing for, then you need to listen to this episode. I'm so excited to talk about this because this was one of the things that I listened and learned from the Empowered Wife book. Now, I did a whole review on that. If you want to hear my thoughts on what I did and didn't like about the book from a Christian wife's point of view, then go and listen to that bonus episode. But that's not what we're talking about today. So, okay. Sometimes husbands resist, right? I want to share just like my own experience with this because I can't speak to your exact situation, but I can tell you what I've gone through. My husband didn't hear what I was actually wanting. So I would go to speak to him about something and he wouldn't hear the emotion. He wouldn't hear that I was desiring something. He wouldn't hear that I was wanting this thing that he could potentially provide to make me happy. What he heard was his wife coming up to him and demanding something or complaining her way into trying to get something. And he felt attacked, maybe defensive. He definitely was not seeing that his wife was asking him for something out of a place of vulnerability or love. And I remember just, not that long ago, probably 6+ months ago, maybe. I remember my husband saying something to me about how he just needs his nice, gentle wife. And sometimes he would just be like, I need my nice wife. Where's my nice wife at? And that would always hit me because I'm like, what do you mean? I am nice. But I didn't realize that I would get into these aggressive tendencies where I was just taking on this masculine role because I somewhere along the line decided that I didn't trust my husband enough to be the masculine role of our home. And so I stepped into it. And that never works, right? We've talked a lot on this podcast about how when you step out of your role and try to take on someone else's, you forfeit the benefits and the rights of your own role. Now, you do not want to do that, because what we are talking about today, what we just dreamed about, that is the feminine right. That is the right to your role in the relationship, is to have a husband who desires to please you. That's one of the things that we are supposed to have in a biblical marriage. And it sounds selfish at first. Yeah, I hear you. But if we lean in, if we say, what does the Bible say about this? And we know that husbands are to love their wives the way that Christ loved the church. Christ desires to sacrifice himself for the church. He gave up his life, the ultimate sacrifice. And he didn't stop there. We know that he sent the Holy Spirit, and then he continues to be with us as we walk in our lives. He continues to be with us, to watch over us, to hear our prayers, to speak through us through the Holy Spirit. So I think it's safe to say that that is biblical, because Christ wants good things for us, and we know that. And so our husbands are supposed to want good things for us. And the reason we often don't get that is because we're not asking the right way. We're not engaging with our husband in the right way. And sometimes they resist just because of their selfish nature. Yeah, I will admit that. I'm not going to say that like husbands are just magically programmed to be excellent husbands from the get. Okay, I will never say that. Me and my husband, we've gone through highs and lows. Okay, we got married at 18. You think that my husband wasn't selfish at 18? Trust me, we were both selfish. We both went through selfish patches of time. We got in the silliest arguments because our flesh was stopping us from seeing the other person's needs and wants and emotions and desires. Okay. I feel like that's a good intro, but I still have this nagging feeling like I'm missing something that I was supposed to say in there. Anyways, guys, when we are coming to our husband from that aggressive point of view, the more masculine side, the side that, and usually this is coming from thoughts or feelings in our head. Sometimes it is connected to the trauma, because when we have past trauma, we feel this rush tendency. And a lot of people are feeling that. Even people who maybe don't think they have trauma. They just feel that rush constantly, day to day, like there's some sort of urgency when there's not. And that is a state of being in survival mode. That is our flight. It is our fight. Not so much our freeze, but sometimes it might cause us to freeze. But it is literally that feeling inside of us that makes us go, go, go. It makes us snap. It makes us act in ways that are opposite to our character, because we feel like there's some sense of urgency. So instead of being patient and loving and kind and gentle with our husband the way we're called to, we feel that sense of urgency and that sense of rushing. And then all of a sudden, we're not giving him the time to do the thing that we've requested, or we're getting so upset because he didn't do it the right way, or we go up to him to ask him for something and assume that he's going to say no. So we have an irritated tone before we even get the sentence out. If someone came up to me and was like, how come you never do this? Or what's another one? Sometimes they'll be like, I wish you would just, and then insert blank. So many ways that these things come out, but I think that gives you a good idea of what I'm talking about. We just come off aggressive before we even get the sentence out, before we even give them a chance. All right. So how do we actually fix this? It was literally only one thing. I made one key shift and it all changed. Now, I won't say it all is perfect overnight and now I can get my husband to do whatever I want. No, that's not true. Okay. My husband, he is strong-willed and so am I, but he is very strong-willed and I am learning to give him space still. I'm still learning to let my husband do what my husband needs to do. And that is hard for me. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's hard for me to not always give my input on what my husband should be doing or the way he should be doing it. But I've learned that that kills our intimacy. So I've had to take my hands off, step back, and trust that my husband is a adult human who is perfectly capable of reasoning and thinking and making decisions. Even if it wasn't the one that I would have made, that doesn't mean that he's not capable of making a good decision. And that's what's dangerous about our feminist culture, but I will not go down that rabbit trail. But just know, the culture we live in tells us that women are more capable of reasoning and that this is just not a job for men, when we see biblically the opposite. And so if you feel that way, I would just challenge you to take that up to the Word of God, because it's not true. All right, now let's get into the real solutions. 1, speak to his values, not just your needs. Now, this is not the key point, but this is good to mention, because sometimes when you are trying to get someone on board with something, you have to connect the dots for why this makes sense for them. And yeah, there might be times where your husband just does something just for you, like not because it has any value to him. But oftentimes there is a shared interest in things, but our husbands just don't see it, right? And so if we can speak his language, if we can connect what we want to do to how it benefits him, what his motivators are, then we win. Now, no one's winning. We're not keeping a scorecard, but just for figure of speech here, we will be on the same team. We will be winning in our marriage. There we go. In a united way. And so this one can only happen, obviously, if you know his values. So I would challenge you to have that conversation with him. The other thing, frame your requests in a way that aligns with his role as a provider, protector, problem solver. So this ties into this. Think about the things that are important to your husband. Most likely it's going to be finances. Does this save you money somehow? Is it a little bit of a sacrifice now, but it'll save us money later? Is this a smart investment for the long term? Does this make the family safer? Does this solve one of your problems? Like tying in these connections of, we need to do this because it'll help with this, or it'll do this, it'll have this effect. Those things speak better to men when we're trying to reason with them on something. The next point. So this is technically point 2 if you're taking notes. Timing matters. Choose the right moment instead of ambushing him when he's stressed or frustrated. And if you feel the impulse to go and talk to him about it, then you should probably not talk to him about it. I know that sounds nuts a little, but it's because sometimes the enemy knows what's on our minds, it's on our heart. Remember that he's prowling around, waiting to pounce, and we need to be alert. And if you feel a sudden urge of a negative emotion bubbling within you, and you feel the need to go have a conversation with your husband, then you probably should not be having that conversation, because Satan is probably right there waiting to pounce and prowl on your marriage. Okay, somebody needed to hear that, because that was not in my notes, but I felt so strongly that I needed to say that. Take it to the Lord, take it to your journal, take it to a friend before you take it to your husband if you're feeling that way. Okay. Here's the next point. So this would be 3. Start with appreciation, not demands. Acknowledge what he does well instead of leading with frustration. So start with gratitude. Okay, we talk about gratitude a lot because gratitude alone could save your marriage. I was watching a video yesterday of a funny guy that I like to listen to, and he said something that I never heard it framed that way. He said, "You will never hear a divorced person say, 'I just had to divorce them. They were too thankful.'" That had me cracking up because it's so true. We live in a culture, again, feminist society, that thinks that we should not have to thank men because they're quote unquote just doing their job. But how often do we as women want to be thanked for quote unquote just doing our job? Nobody is just doing their job. The roles are hardly ever 50-50, even split down the middle for every single responsibility. We need to think first. Start with appreciation. I know that there's something that you can find to be thankful for. I feel like maybe I'm coming off a little harsh, and I'm sorry if I am. It's just, I feel so passionate about this because I have seen firsthand the effect of putting these things into place. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up because it's getting long here. So the next thing is to make it a team decision. Instead of pushing for a yes, invite him into the decision-making process. Do not go into it with the mindset of, I just want to get my way. I just want to be right. Okay? Now, be willing to hear his perspective. That's the other point in this, is sometimes a no has a reason. And if you just get defensive without actually listening to him, without actually digging into why he feels that way, then you're really missing an opportunity to connect with him and missing an opportunity to get to know your husband more and hear his heart. Okay, now here's the main tip of all. This is how you really, really get your husband to want to not communicate. This is how you really get your husband to want to give you what you're asking him for. You have to frame it in a way that lets him know you are pleasable and this is a way he can please you. You are pleasable and this is a way he can please you. This is why gratitude works. It makes you pleasable in your husband's eyes. If you are not grateful every time your husband gets you something, he will learn that getting you gifts is just a waste of time. Okay. This might sound ridiculous, but I want you to think about this from a perspective of spiritual warfare. If your husband gets you something, maybe he bought you a juicer or he bought you a chocolate bar and you told him you're on a diet, and so now you're mad because you didn't want the chocolate bar because you're on a diet and now it's in the house and you feel like you have to eat it. Or he bought the juicer and you never in your life have thought about juicing and you don't have time to take on the other thing. And as soon as you see that thing, you get anxiety and you're like, what the heck did you get me a juicer for? Okay, so as I'm saying that, hopefully some example from your real life is coming to your mind, because here's the thing. When you shut down that gift, that gives the enemy an opening in your husband's mind to go in there and say, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do anyways. It's not going to make her happy. It doesn't matter how I try. I'm never going to get this right. All these thoughts start pouring into his head. Attack after attack after attack. And he will become convinced, maybe not in one situation, but certainly over time, he will become convinced that you are not pleasable and he is not the right person to please you. And that is so discouraging for a man. And that is one of the number one ways that you can break your marriage down to the ground. So please don't do it. I know that I was guilty of doing this in the early years of our marriage, and it did destroy my husband. And thankfully I was able to catch it and correct it. So there's forgiveness, there's restoration. But if you're doing that, I would stop now. The right way to go about it is to come to your husband and say, honey, I would love to just, and then insert your dream. Whatever it is your dream about. Even if it's just about some chocolate. Even if it's just about dinner. Even if it's just about, a vacation. I don't know. It could be anything big or small. Just tell him your dreams. I would love to. Or, I really want blank. It would make me so happy if we could blank. Framing it with these phrases that show him this is a way to please you. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I hope that you guys understand. This is really simple, but it does take work. It takes practice. All right, now I just want to ask you this question, just to ponder, to think, how did your parents communicate? Were your parents married? Did they have a healthy marriage? Did they communicate in a healthy way? Did your mom feel heard and supported? Did she get her requests met? How did she request things to your father? And how might these things be affecting your marriage today? Okay, wives, I encourage you to go out and take the next step for your marriage and your communications. Do not worry about how your husband will respond, if he's going to be the one to step up, if he'll do his part. Put that all out of mind. Just feel the peace wash over you of only having to do your part and your role, and trusting that the Lord will do the rest, that He will bless what you do. Put your husband in the Lord's hands and trust. Okay, now if you have a specific marriage question, I am leaving a link in the show notes. I've never done this before, but I'm leaving a link in the show notes that you can go and ask me your question. I would love to hear from you guys, and I will answer it on a podcast episode. And if you guys want my one-on-one support, finding the right next step for your marriage and getting that healthy, united marriage that you are dreaming of, I do offer free coaching calls, and you can book one of those in the show notes below as well. Remember, healthy marriages create healthy homes, and healthy homes change generations. I love you. I'm rooting for your marriage transformation, and I am praying for you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got so much value out of it. And if you loved this episode, could you do me a quick favor and click 5 stars and leave me a review? It would do wonders for spreading the podcast out to other people who need it, and it only takes a few seconds. If you have an additional few seconds, why don't you go ahead and screenshot the episode and share it to your stories so we can spread the message and get more families healed. Thank you, and until next time, I will be praying for you, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye.